Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raad Life. I want today to introduce you to a gentleman that I've known through the spa industry for a while. It's interesting. Nicolas Ronco has been a serial entrepreneur. He's been a consultant. He is a innovative thinker, and he is not afraid to be a disruptor or even a maverick in rethinking how some things should be. Certain industry sectors should be operating, like looking at things from a different perspective, which for all intents and purposes defines the word pivot, which is an instrumental word and has been more and more important every day in this last 2 months of everybody pivoting during this pandemic. I want to bring Nick on here and have him introduce himself, give us a little background and what is he working on. And I promise you this conversation will be an interesting one. It always is whenever I get the chance to talk to him. So let's see if we can bring Nicolas on. Nick, are you there?
I'm here.
He's there, and he for a moment there you were ghosted in the dark with the hat, and so it's like almost like a witness protection program. You know, it's like the identity.
How do you know my real life? How do you know my real identity?
Yeah, the identity of those on camera are sealed for your protection and theirs.
Exactly.
So Nick, thanks for taking the time to be on with me, buddy.
Oh, my pleasure, Rod.
I wanted to, before you came on, I mentioned that you've been a serial entrepreneur, you have been a consultant, an expert on things, and you are not afraid to be a disruptor or to innovate by taking a different approach or different perspective to things that are either whether industry sector or products. And I'm not gonna spoil the surprise, because I think where you're at right now, the group of people that you are associating with right now, from the company name alone, is fascinating. So I'm gonna let you basically share that. But for those who don't know you, please take a minute and just give a little bit of background and some of the adventures that you have been on.
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me on your show. I really enjoy your format, and I've enjoyed the conversation that you and I have had in the past. So
Likewise.
I'm happy to share that with a larger audience. I'll tell you, I really like the way you called it adventures, because that's the way I've seen my professional life. I've been very blessed to be able to work in different sectors, different industries. I started in the music business for Warner Music, part of Warner Media at the time. I was there for 10 years in New York, then moved to publishing, then moved to software, then moved to my real passion as an entrepreneur, which was wellness.
Yeah.
That's when I created Yellow Spa in 2007. And basically, Yellow Spa was known as the sleep spa. So we were one of the first one in 2007 to see sleep as one of the main pillar of health, while people were mostly looking at, nutrition and exercise.
Right.
And now, after a lot of efforts, people are realizing that sleep is actually one of the most important pillar of your health, both in terms of physical health, heart health, immune health, which is so important right now, given what we're going through, mental health, depression, and all these kind of things.
Right. So without the appropriate amount and the right quality of sleep, your body does not do what it's programmed naturally to do.
Yes, you go basically into an inflammation mode, and this can get actually very dangerous. Yeah. And people cannot go without sleep for too long. I mean, if you don't sleep regularly for over 2 months, you're at risk of dying. And even if your sleep is disrupted for like a week, you start developing type 2 diabetes. Something that shocks people.
Nick, when that truth basically hit me really between the eyes, was not relevant to sleep per se, but it was the idea of sleep. I was doing a restaurant in LA, and we had a green wall, a big, huge natural green wall, and it was like you'll love this. This doesn't fit in a box. It was French, Vietnamese, California cuisine.
Wow.
Okay. And it was amazing. I'll give a shout out to the chef, because she has a restaurant in Pasadena right now. Mon Chéri, the chef is Chef Kimmy Tang. If you guys are ever in Pasadena, go check out Mon Cherie because her food is amazing. Anyway, this was a restaurant called 9021 Pho. Again, I had nothing to do with the name, but it's LA.
Right.
But right, so we really anchored the design, a sense of that first impression experience against this green wall that was going to have basil and little Japanese eggplants and all the stuff that you would see in the menu. And I wanted that photo op where the chef was going to use her little scissors to cut off the little herbs, with the idea that she could, if she wanted to, although the health department would not let her, she could use them in cooking her meal. So part of this was the restaurant hours of operation were such that it was from, like, let's say late morning all the way through to about 10 o'clock at night. So it was almost a 12-hour cycle, right? And so during that period of time, you had the plants in the green wall under all this lighting that was in the space. And in our first cases, we did not have the benefit of being able to put like a skylight or a natural source of lighting or whatever. So there was artificial lighting all for 12 hours. Then at night, they would turn on the lights to basically provide like grow lights. So what we were basically doing to those plants, and all of a sudden the plants are not doing very well. And we had all these experts and all this stuff, right? What we were doing to the plants is we were basically torturing them as if they were in Gitmo. I mean, the plants had no sleep cycle. There was no REM cycle for the plants. And you could see the physical impact on those plants, those living plants, because of a lack of sleep.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating because intuitively, it was like, well, when we're in operation, we're in operation. And then when we're not, that's when the plant basically gets nutrition from lighting and water and all stuff. Oh my God. It was, I mean, and I'm like, if a lack of sleep cycle does that to a plant, what does it do to a human being? Right? So you're absolutely spot on. I mean, we were focused on nutrition and fitness, and we forgot things like that, or hydration. And hydration, I think maybe we're a little bit more aware of, but sleep is something that, and so many people suffer from it, right? I mean, it's a very common ailment, the lack of enough sleep or quality sleep.
Yes, it's a modern kind of illness, and this is why I created Yellow, because it's really, it's a chronic illness, and it's a chronic illness that most urbanites go through, that we start going through maybe as kids, maybe as teenagers. We have rhythm which are absolutely not natural, and you saw it with the plants, and you can kill any kind of living being by not letting it go through its natural rhythm.
It's like when they tortured people and basically keep the lights on and the music on, like there's no shutdown. It's very stressful. And I'll tell you, I'll be the first to admit, also as you get older, I think it becomes more and more critical.
Correct. Because your sleep cycles start changing, your production of melatonin decreases, unfortunately, as you get older. So you have to get smarter about hacking your system. You have to realize that naps are completely fine. You also have to understand the history of human beings. We all tend to look at human beings like they were created, 100 years ago, in the 20th century. Obviously, human beings as what we are today were created 50,000 years ago. And it's not like Adam and Eve, we just didn't appear like this. Obviously, we're the result of evolution on the planet. And basically, our ancestors and most of human history, let's say from 50,000 years ago to 200 years ago, we didn't have any beds. We were prey rather than being predators. We didn't have any shelter. So we spent, and where we all come from Africa, we spent our time basically trying to avoid capture by predators, trying to kill some prey. And we were very awake at night. And so we've always been what's called polyphasic animals. In other words, that whole story about having to sleep 7 to 8 hours a night and then having to be super energetic and super awake for the rest of the day is complete BS. As animals, we, and you look at your dogs, that's what they do. You look at your cats, that's what they do. You look like animals in the natural world, that's what they do. If you, I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Tanzania in Africa, and I was in the middle of the savannah at 2 in the afternoon, and you have a bunch of lions on one side and a bunch of zebra on the other side, and nobody's going after each other, and the zebra is going, they're literally a few feet away from the lions. Why? Because it's 2 p.m.
It's siesta time.
They're all napping, because if they start running after each other at 2 p.m., they will basically die of dehydration. So that would make sense. And this is why animals hunt at night. They don't hunt during the day mostly.
Well, isn't it funny?
Animal documentaries.
Isn't it funny that we also will look at certain countries and cultures as almost being undeveloped, and yet in those cultures, things as afternoon siestas or going home and basically, having a 2 to 3 hour off the, basically the work cycle, and you put your head down for a few minutes. I mean, it's not uncommon, right? I mean, the Middle East, there's a lot of cultures that basically do that. Obviously, as things get more quote unquote modernized, less and less emphasis is put on that, but it's not uncommon. Like somebody basically just had lunch and basically took a nap for about half an hour.
Not only it's not uncommon, but it's the rule. I mean, I grew up in Tunisia in the 70s, and we didn't have air conditioning.
Yep.
And people took nap from the month of May to October between noon and 2 p.m. At some point, people were taking half an hour nap. I mean, I was home, and my dad had his own company. He was coming home, having lunch with us, taking a half-hour nap, then going back to the office. Kids would take a nap. Like, we didn't have any choice. I mean, you literally could not stay active by 90 or 100 degrees. Like,
no, I remember that being. I remember that growing up in Kuwait too. I mean, it was very, very common, especially if you have a diet that's also kind of like a very rich diet. Like you're like double whammy. You're gonna eat really good lunch, and then you can't really function in that heat. And so the smart survival instincts say, I'm gonna take a nap. It's going to cool down a little bit, and then I basically go to work. And the hours don't end at 5; they go to 7, maybe, or 6. And so the culture adjusts. Same thing, and you can talk about South America or Mexico or Central America. I mean, there's a lot of examples of this. So
and then you transpose that to so-called modern culture like the U.S. And at Yellow, the majority of
and you
the
get people to pay you.
napping.
You get people to pay you for it.
Of course, they paid us for a very high quality nap in a protected environment called the Yellow Cab, where they could control the aromatherapy, they could control the length of time, anywhere from 20 minutes to 40 minutes, so that they wouldn't fall into slow wave sleep and then suffer from what's called sleep inertia. But yeah, I mean, people were not only paying for naps, they were like begging us to offer more naps. And most of our clients were lawyers, private equity people, hedge fund people. They were not, like your whatever, like basic kind of worker. These guys were like high performing individuals, and they were taking naps during the day, and it was kind of their secret. It was their secret weapons, and they were the only one not falling asleep during boring, accounting or investment meeting at 4 in the afternoon, thanks to the nap. Well, but also in a more serious way. I mean, a lot of them told us we saved their lives, because a lot of them were overweight and they lost weight thanks to that. A lot of them suffered from type 2 diabetes and were able to reduce it or eliminate it. Some of them suffered from depression. There were a lot of conditions that we were able to help with. I could not say legally treat, because we're not doctors, but definitely help with.
Well, Nick, I mean, I tell people, I mentioned it before you came on. I said, you and I met through the spa industry and wellness industry, and it's, people always look at me weirdly when I basically say, modern life got to the point where we basically were willing to pay for sleep and for silence. We would pay for silence, right? Because that's how noisy the world around us is. We would pay top dollar for basically sleep or silence. And it's very true. And when you start breaking it down, and it becomes very apparent why we are willing to do that, why that is actually an investment in ourselves, that if we can't secure it ourselves, we will go somewhere where we can actually maybe, like your Yellow Spa. So for how long did you have that, and what happened? What was your next journey?
So Yellow Spa was open from 2007 to 2019. Now I want to say I was fortunate to be able to sell part of it and close part of it. I sold part of the IP, the customer database, and then closed basically the physical location. And I'm so glad that I was able to do it a year ago rather than doing it right now, as most spas are going basically into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And it's just a very ugly and difficult situation for, you know, these kind of establishments now. And these were establishments that were already suffering way before the COVID crisis started. And now I'm very happy. I joined right after I closed Yellow Spa, a group called Group of Humans, which just seems a little weird when you say it because I'm a human now, which I don't know what I was before.
God, that's so tribalistic, you know. It's just,
It is.
we are a group of humans, and you're another group of humans. But yeah, tell us. So what's the impetus? Like, how did this come about? How long has Group of Humans been around?
So Group of Humans has been around for a little bit over 2 years, and I joined them like a year into the group. The official definition of Group of Humans is distributed, curated B2B network of the best designers, storytellers, technologists, and strategists in the world. I'm not the one saying that, it's on the website. All of whom share a belief that technology should be harnessed not for efficiency, but for the benefit of people, society, and the environment. What it is basically is a bunch of people like you and I with at least 20 years of experience, a very solid track record in all different kind of industries, all different kinds of, you know, skill sets. A lot of these people came from tech, so that's why a lot of our clients are Google, Intel. Intel was my first assignment last summer, eBay, Microsoft. But now we're, you know, working on a mission for Casper, the mattress, and soon to be the sleep company, because they're rebranding into that as well, and we're helping them with that, hopefully. And it's really a group of very smart people from New York, Miami, LA, London, Paris, Milan, Australia as well, who share a passion for brand. And I think, you know, because we are basically a network of people, we're a group of people, we're not a company, we are able to, we've been working the way everybody's working now for the past, you know, 2 years as Group of Humans. Zoom has been our main tool. And we've been working with a very light footprint. We don't have any office space per se as Group of Humans. And our goal is really, the way we work, our MO is to really embed within the client's teams.
Well, so, sounds like a bigger picture, wider impact, almost think tank that is not necessarily limited to any particular sector, but it's bringing more the philosophical approach that you described to whatever it is that you're assigned to. I mean, and willing to basically look at things for the common good or the larger good.
Yeah, and also in a very concrete way, like the companies which are, so in the past, for example, for Intel, we were working on rebranding part of their business, such as 5G, for example. We were working on creating a full-blown keynote experience, Apple way, for Intel, which has never done that in its entire history. So it's really like the storytelling aspect that's very important within Group of Humans, because every brand has to have a story to tell. If you don't have a story, you don't have anything to say.
Right.
And now what's really interesting, and this is where we're like so relevant, is our company is coming for two things. One is, how do we stay relevant in the new environment? And two, how do we speak to our customers in a non-tone deaf way? Because now people are so sensitive with the COVID crisis, consumers are so sensitive that if as a brand or a politician or a human being, you send the wrong message or you look like you're insensitive to the situation, you become immediately dismissed. You become a jerk, like very quickly.
Well, and it's very easy to do if you're still applying this. I mean, you and I have talked about this. If you're still applying the old normal way of communicating and connecting with people, right?
Exactly.
Right now, if you are not messaging from a point of empathy, from a point of we're in this sort of together, but authentically, and that's the other thing too. I think right now people, it's bullshit. Excuse my French, but the bullshit meter is radar is very heightened, and they will see it for what it is. If you are not authentic, if you're not willing to be vulnerable in how you approach people, then and receptive, then what comes across is contrived, ulterior motive, like untimely. If you're lucky, it's just untimely, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen this happen multiple times. And for brands, you may have spent the last 20 years basically building a reputation, but if you make a misstep right now, you could be looking another 20 years just doing damage control.
That's absolutely correct. I've always said to all of my clients, it takes years to build trust, because trust, it's really all about trust right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you talk about the spa industry, it's trust that, you'll be safe coming back into a spa. Right. Or a wellness center. Trust that you'll be safe coming back into a restaurant. Trust that you'll be safe coming back into a hotel, in the hospitality. Trust that you'll be safe coming back into an airport or a plane for airlines. And this is going to be tested big time. But to the point you're making earlier, there is one company, and you and I were talking about this earlier, that really blew my mind, that all transparency we're not advising. It's Rag & Bone, the clothing company in New York. And the CEO sent a letter a few days ago to their consumer where, if that's okay, I'm not going to read the whole letter, but I'm just going to read like 2 paragraphs that I think are so on point. Is that okay with you, Raad?
Yeah, absolutely.
So he talks about the current situation, and then he says, but like the rest of the world and the rest of our industry, we're doing our best to navigate our way through this, acknowledging that we need to do it all we can to support and protect our employees, our company, and our customers. To that end, we have decided to lower our retail prices across the board until this is over, or until we're allowed out of our homes and back to work. So first thing, make it affordable, because Rag & Bone, has a tendency to be a little bit on the expensive side. Yeah. But then the other paragraph I thought was so good also. He said, the time for buying stuff for the sake of buying stuff is over. I, for one, am buying only things that I need, or things that mean something to me and that are properly made and that will last. And for me, at least, sometimes a damn good t-shirt can make me feel a whole lot better than a disposable one. And again, I think he's really nailing it in terms of his communication. Like he's saying, don't buy as much as you used to.
And buy
bullshit.
And buy quality that lasts.
Exactly. Buy a t-shirt that's going to last you 5 or 10 years, rather than a disposable stuff that's going to last you 2 months, and that's going to screw with the environment anyway.
You know what? Though, Nick, this is what's funny, right? That philosophy is not a new philosophy. It's a philosophy that actually we have had on different occasions through the course of human history. I mean, the last time, because I'm seeing this echo in other things. I'm seeing it echo in the popularity now of gatherings places in terms of millwork and cabinetry, media centers now are more critical because they're basically family gathering spots. They're the equivalent of modern day equivalent of being around the campfire basically. So the need for something that would accommodate. In fact, in some cases, that may not be just a media area or media center. That may become the virtual classroom for your kids for the next 6 months to a year. So that takes on a different relevance. The home office now is you may be furloughed now, but your company may basically have you be working out of the house. So the home office, you're seeing this sort of quality and meaningfulness behind what it is that you're spending money on. The one that really hit me was the pantry in the kitchen. People are now wanting bigger pantries, and why? Because they are basically cooking at home they're cooking at home. They're also, and this resonates directly with the Great Depression. is right after the Great Depression or during the Great Depression, people pickled, they preserved, they made jams. You know, when something was available, they bought it and then they preserved it for later. They cured meat, right? And so the pantry was a huge, huge useful thing that needed to be done. The idea of buying quality over quantity is something that has resonated with people off and on throughout the course of human history, and crisis usually sometimes prompt that. The interesting thing about that, though, is it's in direct conflict with the consumer society that we mostly find ourselves in. That basically economic engines are built on. Like, if you don't change your car every 3 years, the economy of the car industry basically is in jeopardy. If you don't, you know, and add another layer to this, which is that we have an aging population. Well, by virtue of behavior patterns and purchasing patterns, people when they get older buy less, right?
Yeah.
They buy less. So retail sales, if your economic engine is based on retail sales and your community is basically aging beyond this, like over 50 or 40, late 40s or whatever, your sales taxes are not going to carry you anymore. You still have to provide resources, financial resources, to provide amenities and services. If you're counting on real estate values, these people aren't moving out of their houses. They're staying in their homes longer. The real estate the taxes on the properties are not increasing based on market value. They're increasing incrementally based on whatever, because people are staying in their homes. They're not changing hands. So you're not getting the money from real estate development because you're built out. You're not getting money from property taxes because they're basically slow but not really market-based. You're not getting sales taxes from purchases. So how are you going to basically navigate your needs for to continue to provide services? These mindsets that we have basically either ignored or didn't even think there was a relevance to. Right now, we are basically faced, like they're hitting us right in the face, like, to reevaluate what is quality, and what is worth mean. And it's fascinating. I wonder, so do you feel like this is going to be just a passing phase, or do you think this will take? Because that's the other thing about human beings, right?
Right. Well, my honest answer is I hope not. I hope it's going to be a lasting, trend in society, because the previous trend was unsustainable. The previous trend, and mostly in America and in countries that, looked like America, because it's not the same in the rest of the world. I remember, again, growing up in Tunisia when I was a kid, my father used to always tell me, my son, we're not rich enough to buy crap. And I thought it was such a great advice that I kept with me for the rest of my life. And I apply this to anything that I buy. Every time I see a purchase decision, I am not rich enough to buy crap. In other words, I want to buy something that I'm going to enjoy, that I'm going to vibrate with, but mostly that's going to last.
Let me just say, it's interesting, because the people I know that are rich, not only do they not buy crap, they buy stuff that lasts, because the reason they are rich is because they don't waste their money.
Exactly.
So it's actually kind of funny that culturally we would basically associate that. I think the people that basically are driven by need to maintain or to project a certain status. And you and I have talked about this before, like, during this pandemic, right? When you used to run into people at a party, the two questions that would come almost at you sometimes from people that are not really, they're a little bit shallow, maybe. That are really kind of just, making small talk, would be, oh, what do you do? And then, oh, what do you drive? Well, during the pandemic, if you have a job, you're lucky. I don't care what you're doing, because, good for you that you actually are still being able to hold on to something. And what do you drive? Well, you're not supposed to be on the road, so I really don't care what you drive. So,
well, I'll tell you, being in New York for over 30 years, we only had the first question because we don't drive here. And my response to the first question, what do you do, is I do my best. And that used to be so unsettling for people, especially, certain women. And I'm like, I'm telling you the truth. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. I really do my best. Anything else is completely unimportant. The fact that I work in the music industry or in the publishing industry, the software industry, or who cares? what should be important to you as another human being is that I do my best. Anything
Well,
else is unimportant.
well, and you and I talked about this before we got on the air, right? About the, I mean, and your point goes directly to this as an example. Is I said, you know, I mentioned to you, we were talking about something, and I mentioned to you, I said, how many selfies have you seen lately? And
Yeah.
we're like, oh yeah, what happened to selfies? Selfies, like hashtag selfies. What happened to selfies? Does that mean that there's a whole, like, you know, junkyard of selfie sticks out there right now? I mean, like, what happened
Probably.
to the selfies, right?
What
And then
happened to influencers?
what happened to influencers? To your point, exactly what you were just saying. Like that sense of value, or like you're wrapping yourself in. What happened to influencers? Who, by the way, were, I mean, and I remember writing about this before COVID. There's a difference between influencers and amplifiers. And I think a lot of the people that we were calling influencers were actually amplifiers, right? They were not
Yes.
really influencers. And it's interesting because what do we put value into right now? Like, who are we basically looking at right now while we're going through this for something? Because we all have time on our hands right now. We actually have more time on our hands right now to pay attention to things than we were before. So where is it? Who is it that's basically resonating with people? There's no influencer market anymore. There's no micro influencer market anymore. Like, you know, the things
There's
that
no influencers and there is no FOMO.
there's no FOMO.
FOMO is gone.
Exactly. FOMO is
It's a
gone. Bye
beauty.
bye.
I
Right.
love it.
Yeah. And I agree.
No,
I'm
but I mean, I want
optimistic
to.
like you. You know,
I,
I hope it takes.
I want to go back to that question though, because I think it's a very good one. It's a very important one. Your original question. From a macro level, we were just a growing population, 7 billion, 8 billion people
Yeah.
on a finite planet.
Yeah.
The circumference of the Earth is not growing as the population is growing, right?
Right.
So it's a finite planet and the number of people are growing and the consumption per capita is growing. The consumption per capita in China is growing tremendously. In India is growing tremendously. Everybody wants an air conditioner. Everybody wants 1 or 2 cars, 2 or 3 TV, flat screens, computers, phones. These guys, you know, were made believe that we need to change them like every year and a half. And now we're realizing it's complete bullshit. And
Well,
so,
if you don't, your consumer market based economy basically fails. If I don't replace my iPhones every year, if I don't replace my car every 3 years, those industries panic because they're basically based on consumption that is not really based on necessity or need.
But I think our point, you and I, is that
Yeah.
this will have to change dramatically. So that's one thing that will have to change. I think the price of the iPhone should go up. The price of a plane ticket should go up. The price of meat should go up. Everything should be priced at their normal price. Like we shouldn't be able to buy a dress at Zara for like 2 months and then change dress and pay $40 for it. No, dress should cost whatever they really cost, like $500, and keep it for 10 years. And I think that, you know, the other thing that needs to happen for us to survive as a species is that we need to get into what's called the circular economy. So not only we need to decrease the consumption, but we need to make sure that these guys, that your computer, that my shirt, that everything will be at least 95% recycled, and that everything like you have in nature. Nature is a circular system. When you go in the forest doesn't need anything but water and the sun. Why? Because all of your organic material are being constantly recycled.
Right.
The leaves from the trees and the mycelium being spread, you know, across the ground and all that stuff. And we need to learn from that. And as a human system, we need to create that circular economy, which we didn't have until now. We're just wasting resources like
Right.
everything is infinite, and it's not.
So I want to just bring us back to something that is common ground for us as well, and it speaks to this, I think, because what you're referring to, and what I wanted to do with the show today is actually just plant this seed, because I think you and I need to basically, you know, have more conversations going forward as we see whether this takes or not, whether people actually embrace this and it's a paradigm shift or not, and what degree. But one of the things that you and I talk about often is the spa industry, the wellness industry. And you said something to me the other day where you asked the question, right? Remember what the question was?
Do we still need spas?
Do we still need spas?
Right.
Right. Now, you and I probably will get crucified for having
Right.
asked that
We
question
will.
right now.
We
But
will.
we're here, we're right here, we're on camera, we're on record, we're asking the question, right?
Yep. Hands up.
All right. Now, Nick asked the question, but I will ask the question as well. Do we need spas? So what do you think? Let's talk about that for a few minutes.
So and I used to own a chain of spas, and I used to be, gung-ho in that industry. And then I realized that, the business model was failing quite rapidly. And I think that's why such a number of, big brands are now basically going bankrupt, and not Chapter 11, but Chapter 7 liquidation, straight to that. Because yes, I mean, there is the need for wellness, the need for healing, the need for, human touch is going to be more important than ever. I have no doubt about this. The need for human connection is going to be more important.
Especially after staying at home, sequestering. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So there is now a phantom demand that's going to be built.
Yeah.
That's going to be crazy. But I think the way we deliver this wellness, the way we deliver a way to go back to equilibrium, to homeostasis as human beings, as our own system, will have to be completely different. And, this is another debate, but that's going to be basically the debate between essentialism and escapism. And I think that, unfortunately, spas were leaning too much toward escapism. Mm-hmm. We're going into that to escape our, shitty life or our world, or we need to get pampered, or we're doing some fillers and Botox and, all of these kind of crappy, and dangerous treatment. Yeah. And I think that it's going to go more towards what is sustainable for me financially, what is going to be sustainable for me as a human being, and what treatments really stick to me. And especially when we go to a huge crisis like this, where we see that people who are able to resist are people who have the strongest immune system, the people who are able to take care of themselves naturally, better than others. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly not the people doing Botox and fillers that, are going to be able to survive.
Well, it's going to be interesting too. Like, I know there's been bootleg hairdressers and people running around, almost like drug dealers dropping off hair color for women and things of that nature, right? And speak easy, hairstylist locations where you need to go upstairs and down the corridor and through the closet, and then maybe there's a chair there. I get that, but what I also realize, or I understand, is that's not the major occurrence right now. So what's happening is kind of an interesting evolution, if you will. Okay. It's not Darwin quality, but it's an interesting evolution. You have people spending more time, like you and I, basically on Zoom, which is a visual medium. That means that what you see is there. Like there's no, I can't run an Instagram filter on this. Okay, this is what's there. Like the quality of your camera and is pretty much it. Like there's a setting on Zoom where you can say, enhance my image or something, but all it does is basically washes a little bit of softness. But what you see is what you get. So we're increasing our visual exposure to one another. We're doing it in a time period where the best that you can hope for in terms of regimen of beauty or kind of like grooming is what you can achieve at home, right? Correct. So you have more people with less manicure, less pedicure, less Botox. All of these things are gone. And at the same time that they are basically gone or much reduced, you have a major increase in visual exposure. So how are we going to deal with that later, now that we have become accustomed to be okay with not having to layer all these masks, excuse the pun, as much as we're wearing a mask this way. But our physical masks that we would normally put on, the overweight because I'm not working out, I'm not, I'm stressed, and so here's what you get. That sort of the humanness of people is now more on display than ever without the guys and the covers, right? It's gonna be interesting. It's almost like I hope that continues, because what that to me says when I see somebody in that condition is authentic.
Exactly. I think it's a major silver lining of this crisis, Raad. I think it's really authenticity. And what this means, it means that people will be allowed to be more vulnerable. and people will be allowed to not look 25 when they're 50.
Right.
And you know, I'm 50, and I'm not trying to look 25. Quite actually, I shave my head during that thing because you know, I don't have any hairdresser.
Hey, buddy,
So
if I take
good.
this off, the hair just goes like this. So it's the
Right,
opposite problem, you know.
right. Like, you know, and I'm very happy. It's like a liberation. That's something that I think I could not have done without that. So I'm vulnerable. I shave my head. I don't want to bother with long hair and things like that. And you know, you see it on late night TV, on late night hosts like the Jimmy Fallon. They're all doing shows from their home.
Yep.
Their kids are jumping on them. You see their home. You see they have like an ugly sofa, an ugly, you know, paint on their wall, whatever. But it's like, you know, screw it. It's my home, and it's my wife, and it's my kid, and it's my dog, and it's everything. And I'm showing you everything, like, you know, full frontal, basically. And I love it. I
Yeah,
love this full, and I hope also that's something that sticks. So I hope that what really sticks from it is essentialism. You know, let's eat the right food. Let's eat good food in the right quantity. Let's not overconsume because that is not sustainable. As the Rag and Bone CEO said, let's just buy what we need or what we really connect with, and let's make, you know, a purchase every 5 years instead of every 5 months. And, you know, let's just be the way we are. Like, stop, you know, putting on a mask and just be who you are and allow yourself to be vulnerable. And we realize that the biggest stars on the planet are also vulnerable. They're also stuck at home. Some of them are telling, you know, I've been smoking pot for 2 months. The other one will tell you, I've been drinking way too much. The other one will, you know, and you just get a peek into their personal life and you realize it's not that different from yours.
You know, it actually is more endearing. I mean, I guess it depends on how a person is wired. For me, it's more endearing. It's more that realism, that vulnerability is actually very appealing. It's very appealing. And and I'm sure there will be people that will overplay that card and they'll try to be overly vulnerable just to basically solicit that kind of reaction. And I think people are savvy enough, and I think our bullshit, like I said, our bullshit radars are heightened in this society, to the point we don't trust anybody, even if they're a scientist telling us something, right? Because there's another scientist over there that tells us the opposite. So we have our own issues and problems, but there is the way we were going, the path that we were on was, I agree with you 100%, was, if you wanted to be honest with yourself, you would agree that that path was unsustainable, absolutely unsustainable. Individually, societally, as just a bunch of people that share a planet, that direction was absolutely unsustainable. It was almost as if we somehow believed that the party would never end and there would never be somebody who showed up with the bill. Right. And that never happens. I mean, they thought the same thing in the 80s. They thought the party was never going to end. The Testarossas were standing, you know, back to back at Studio 54, and you know, the champagne was flowing and the white powder was flowing and the party was never going to end. And then what happened? Somebody showed up with the bill. Right. And the question was, oh crap, I hope I'm not the one who gets stuck with it. Somebody else gets stuck with the bill. But the bill showed up. So
and what was the bill at the time? The bill was AIDS.
Yes.
You know, it's another virus.
It was AIDS. It was an absolute economic catastrophe. I mean, we went into the 90s, right? There was division. There was all kinds of stuff. And the thing that's interesting about if we actually followed what the CEO basically has said, like, buy what you need, buy something that's quality, right? You would have never, if that was the setting we were at, you would have never had people buy 141 rolls of toilet paper for 14 days of sequestering when this thing first started.
Exactly.
Like the hoarding attitude is directly a reflection of the fact that it was all about consume. It was all about whatever, and it's how much as we can get. Because if anybody stopped for a minute and calculated how much toilet paper they needed, they would have never bought 144 toilet paper rolls or paper towels. And if you were actually motivated by how much I need, and therefore if I basically limit it to what I need, then somebody else would have the ability to have resources for them. So it's not just me. I am sharing this planet. I'm sharing this reality. I'm sharing this crisis with other people. And so I have to, you know, I'm empathetic I'm respectful, I am sensitive, I'm vulnerable to their needs and mine, I would have never bought all that toilet paper. So it, we were on a path that, thank God, it only reflected in toilet paper, because it could have been a lot worse.
Absolutely. And you see now you can't even buy 144 rolls of toilet paper. I mean, you go to Target or you go online, you can only buy 4 at a time.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, I always liked Costco, but my respect for Costco went through the roof when they refused to take that toilet paper back.
Right.
It's like, you were stupid enough to buy that much toilet paper?
Yeah, you're stuck with it.
You're stuck with it.
Yeah.
So, again, let's just repeat a couple of things, like essentialism, not escapism. Although let's not knock escapism. Escapism, even in the Great Depression, through movie theaters and sort of healthy escapism, that also helped. It gave people a little bit of a vacation away from the realities, just for a moment, so they can regroup, they can recenter, maybe. So there's a place for it.
I'll tell you something else on that point, Rod. I think sometimes escapism can save lives.
Yeah.
I was telling you earlier, I'm the co-chair of the immersion initiative with the Global Wellness Institute.
Yeah.
And one thing that we're working on is to start providing immersion experiences in hospitals. And as the technology is improving in audio, video, and soon in VR, and I've had my share of staying in hospitals, either as a patient or as a caregiver. And you realize that this is a really nasty environment once you're in it. It's absolutely not about healing. The noise level is crazy. You're constantly being disturbed and poked. They don't allow you to sleep properly. Yeah. The food is terrible. We all know about hospital food. You have zero privacy.
Right.
So, I mean, the stress level within hospital is crazy. And when you think about, kids being in hospitals, or you think about elderly people being in hospital, a lot of them have a negative health event. That's the polite way of saying an accident when they come out of hospitals, because they, staying in the hospitals will take a toll on your health. That's the truth. They will try to save your life on certain things and cure certain things, but the overall stay, because of the environment, will save your life. So if you can provide a visual or VR-based immersion initiative where you're like, working in a forest or going to the beach or being underwater for like 30 minutes, that's incredibly healing. That will reduce your blood pressure, reduce your heart rate, reduce your stress level, improve basically all of your markers. So in that sense, escapism is actually a very good thing.
Well, you could argue
that's the same point as the movies that you're mentioning earlier.
Well, you could argue that my 30 minutes of meditation in the morning is a form of escapism. I mean, right. There's a healthy way about it. I think that I don't have so much I don't have a problem with escapism. I think, like anything else, in moderation, it has a positive potential. I think when escapism becomes denial, that is when it becomes a problem. And when it's all I am doing is basically, in order to maintain my denial, I am basically escaping into alternative realities without a foothold on the real. That's when it becomes a problem, because that's just like almost, over substance abuse. Whatever your substance of choice may be, whether it's alcohol, whether it's food, whether it's sex, whether it's escapism. I mean, if all you're doing is running from one thing to the other and you're escaping from your real life, it's unhealthy. If you're using the escapism, for lack of a better word, as a form of just like helping, like a meditation. I'll use that as an example again. That 30 minutes of meditation in the morning sets my whole pace of the day. It allows me to maintain a levelness that I can basically navigate through the ups and downs of the day without really being disrupted too much. It allows me to come back to a point of effectiveness. It allows me to understand that, my being vulnerable is not a weakness. It is actually a strength and a form of connectivity with other people. Being willing to receive, whether it's life, whether it's challenges, whether it's other people's inputs into it, knowledge as I encounter it. That escapism in the morning actually is a positive tool. It's when it becomes
because you escape within.
I'm escaping within. I'm reconnecting. That's so
exactly.
So what you're talking about is similar in that even in a VR environment, if it has a positive impact on the reality, if it puts me in a state of calmness, if I can, and you talked about seniors, absolutely. I mean, isolation, big problem, right? You talk about these first responders. I mean, I saw this in the senior industry a few years ago, and I am watching to see what's going to happen with these first responders. I have not seen it yet, by the way. A few years ago, we in the senior industry realized there is a fatigue that happens to caregivers. So whereas the caregiver is actually providing the care, for the very longest time, nobody really connected the dots that caregiver is in need of care themselves. And then
I think the caregivers, are the most in need of care.
Right, and then it triggered.
It's very tough to be a caregiver.
And then it triggered, and then things like cruises for caregivers, that escapism, if you will, to allow them to recalibrate, to recharge, to recenter, became very critically important in the ability to service the industry for senior care. You had to basically care for the caregivers. What I have not seen yet, is a clear understanding that these people we understand their sacrifice. We definitely do. I think as a nation, everybody's understanding the sacrifice that doctors and nurses and people that are, first responders are doing right now for all of us across the planet. But I have not seen a clear understanding that these people cannot, it's been 60 days, right? There has to be some sort of a system, a program, a support mechanism to allow them to continue to perform their job, because they're burning out. They're already burning out. And I'm not talking about just in terms of danger of exposure to the virus. I'm just talking about in just the course of being of service to others.
Absolutely. I have tremendous respect. I've always had tremendous respect for the medical profession. And when I was a patient in hospitals, I see the environment that these guys are working under.
Yeah.
And what they're able to provide on very little sleep and very high stress, because obviously everybody is cranky, and patients are very difficult by definition because they're themselves suffering quite a bit in hospitals. And now they're like, real heroes, and they really need, to your point, they need to be taken care of. And one of the things that we want to do with the immersion is actually start with the caregivers. Start with the nurses, start with the doctors, and give them escapism from, the hell that they're seeing, on a daily basis.
It's bad enough. It's bad enough that we're basically also, putting them under additional stress by questioning the reliability of the information that they're saying. Oh no, the hospitals are not full. No. It's amazing to me how we're not understanding exactly, some people, not all, are not understanding exactly how much is being sacrificed right now. And there will be a day, like we say, there will be a day when the bill comes, and there will be people that we will see. It's just like, remember 9/11? 9/11, when everybody basically was like, and then next thing you know, there was the first responders with the mysterious illness, and you remember all of that. And then for years after that, until we came to some terms and some sort of compensation for that sacrifice. I'm going to put this up again because, I know it's where you're working right now, but it's a reminder for everybody else that's out there that at the end of the day, we are all a group of humans.
Exactly. That's why we are. And that's why we are, recognizing again in each other. And I'm really loving, I hate a lot of aspects of this crisis. I hate the suffering. I had the death. I had the distancing from your family, from your parents. But I really like the fact that at least for a few months, it's a huge reset, and it's really forcing us to look at each other as humans. And, you're talking, first responders, like when people in certain states, like in your state, for example, wanted to reopen too quickly.
Yeah.
Who was in the streets, like blocking the demonstration, right? Nurses.
Right.
When I saw that, I was moved to tears. I was moved to tears.
When you saw that image.
Yeah, I was wow.
When you saw the image, you and I are very visual. When you saw that image, before you even read the story, although you knew that was what it was probably about, right? When you saw that image, of that nurse basically standing there in front of the car, what image did it remind you of?
Tiananmen Square.
Absolutely, 110%.
Tiananmen Square, yeah.
Okay, I'm
Same
talking
thing.
and what was fascinating to me is that in Tiananmen Square, everybody was against the oppression of basically a Chinese government trying to put down a freedom-seeking person right there who's willing to stand in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square. Here, the people that were basically driving the car were probably people that the Tiananmen Square image resonated with. And yet they find themselves now being in the driver's seat of the tank. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And somehow
And
feeling justified in their
yelling
behavior.
at these people, yelling at the nurses.
I thought, I mean, I've always said, you don't need to do friggin' drugs. I think the human condition is fascinating enough without it, right? But
correct.
But here's a situation where, in the course of denial, okay, we are willing to find things that divide us versus that unite us. And at the end of the day, I mean, that logo says it all. We are all a group of humans.
Yeah.
Right. By the way, very cool logo. Whoever designed that, hats off to them. Right.
Thank you.
I still want that hat.
I'll tell Rob Noble.
You tell him. But the thing that we need to basically connect with right now is that A, we are all a group of humans. B, we are really all in this together. And you and I have said this. There is a silver lining. There are a few gifts if we choose to look at them that this pandemic has brought. It has given us the gift of time. It has given us the gift of quieting the noise enough to where we can hear ourselves think, right? We can self-reflect. We can really hold ourselves accountable to what is important in our lives, reevaluate what is the meaning of value for us, whatever that is, whether it's your personal value, your professional value, whatever that may be. Right now, we are able to do that because it slowed down long enough. That's how fast we were running. We were running so fast, we could not do this. Like, you really had to be very dedicated to do this. And now everybody has been given yes, it's been a crisis, but you've been also given 60 days that you could really replenish your soul and reconnect.
And think about, again, essential things. Like, if I can submit a dream to you, okay, to maybe have capitalism and the pyramid like turn on its head, right? Imagine a world where investment bankers, hedge fund managers, all of these guys making millions today are paid $50,000 to $70,000 a year, and teachers, nurses, the people who are like really essential to our survival are paid millions of dollars a year.
Hey, you sound like
these guys really deserve it. Our society needs that. Like, we realize that who the fuck cares about Wall Street people during this crisis? Like, did they do anything for us during this crisis?
Well, I don't want to look on a human level. I don't want to basically generalize either, because I think that's a danger. The minute you basically open that can of worms, you generalize from a position of bias, and that's really doesn't serve anybody's purpose. I think as human beings, those people probably contribute, suffer the same way, what have you. As an industry overall, I think what it really speaks to is that we have a skewed idea of value. And I'm not trying to be, like family values and all this. I'm just saying in value, like, what do we value? Like we have an insatiable, never satisfied, in some cases, hunger for the next thing. So we don't even have an understanding of what is satisfaction for us. What is it that is enough? Like, what is it that's enough? I think every single one of us needs to know what that is, needs to know what their definition of satisfaction is. Is it dinner with your family every day? Is it not being married and having kids, not being married and having kids? Like, what is the value? What is your definition of satisfaction? And it changes over the course of your life. I understand that. But most people don't even stop long enough to evaluate that. So if you don't know what that is, you're like an empty, like a bottomless hole. You're going to continue to consume and absorb, and there's no way of knowing that you have reached a level of satisfaction and saturation. And that was the path that we were on. Our values, evaluation of things was so skewed. What you're talking about is that we should be building more value in people that are providing essential services, those teachers, those, instead of them basically struggling with having to be compensated for the time that they spend with our children that are critical to the future of our existence. Okay. And somehow,
this is one thing that's coming up in everybody's mouth who has children right now. The teachers are not paid enough, and our kids are not a pleasure to deal with.
Well,
because everybody is realizing that.
They had to experience it, though, right?
They had to experience it. Exactly.
They had to experience what a teacher goes through.
Exactly.
That's just, again, a very human characteristic. Sometimes you can tell somebody all day long about something, but until they experience it themselves. So again, this common experience that we have going on right now, okay, is an opportunity for us to evaluate things differently, starting with what and how we value things. Starting with how we value each other.
Yeah, and I'm going to push it again. I'm sorry to do that, but I think, speaking about valuation, we have to look at the way capitalism is built and the stock market is built. Today, CEOs of public companies have a fiduciary responsibility towards only one group of stakeholders, named the shareholders.
Shareholders. Yep.
Okay, and it's a legal fiduciary responsibility towards them, which, when you think about it, it's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
The fiduciary responsibility should be towards the employees, should be towards the clients and the consumers. These should be like the two groups of people and the other thing that is unsustainable is that because of that, you have to continue to provide growth, right? A company that doesn't grow either its profit, its revenue, its EBITDA, its audience, is basically, the stock is either stagnating or going down.
Right.
Okay. Now, what if we had a system where growth was not valued anymore? Because again, from what we were saying earlier, from a consumerism standpoint, from a planetary standpoint, growth is unsustainable. Nothing can continue to grow linearly or exponentially or geometrically forever on a finite environment. It just mathematically doesn't make any sense. So what if all companies, the only aim of all companies was to break even? You pay everybody, you pay your employees very well, you provide the best services and the best product at the appropriate price. You're not price gouging people. You're not looking for, 90% gross margin. No, you're looking for margin and EBITDA margin where you're going to be at break even, and growth is not going to be valued anymore. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, and I went to business school and I was raised in a capitalistic mindset. But when you look at what's going on, I think we have to start to think in revolutionary ways.
Well, see, now you're using critical. Not only do you sound socialist, but you also use words like revolutionary, and you God knows what else, right? But no, I'm teasing you. But yeah, no, I don't think it's crazy, Nick. I think the idea of thinking about that or any other model that is in contrast to what we have right now, or a hybrid of what we have plus something else that we also have equal value on, is not a crazy idea at all. I think what's crazy is when we stop doing that. Because I will tell you, there is one thing that comes to mind that is a growth that actually I think I could absolutely support, and that's personal growth. Like when we talk about growth, we don't even evaluate growth as only being like it's financial. Like growth in it as like what happened? Who kidnapped the word growth and associated only with financial gain and like bigger buildings and bigger assets and bigger portfolios? Growth is growth. Growth is a plant that basically survives and then recycles, to your point, and basically has a circular life cycle, right? And then basically becomes nutrition to the next generation and so forth. Personal growth is something we should be championing. But personal growth also is something that is not necessarily connected directly to financial growth. That's personal growth.
It's not at all.
Right. It's personal growth.
And it's not killing the environment, quite the opposite.
Right. And I think what does not make sense is when we stop thinking about hybrid solutions, because over time, any model, whether it's whether it's a capitalistic system or a socialist system, and I hate these extreme words. I mean, I think
No, but
hybrid.
I don't even like to categorize. I don't
Well,
care
that's
about
that's what
socialism or these kind of things,
I agree with
because
you.
it's got a different definition in every country and every
Absolutely.
system.
Actually, one of the things that I remember from going to college is I did a class on political science, and I remember as clear as day that we basically took down, and it was a straight line, left and right, and then you basically had to put the political parties by definition. So you had like a centrist party, a left-wing, right-wing party, you had a green party, whatever it was, right? Let's say that there's a set standard of parties in every culture, in every country. We would draw a line, and every country is represented by that line. And then you put the parties, not by label, but by where they stood from the actual physical center, physical left and physical right. You had countries that had centrist parties that were all the way to the left. You had countries that had right-wing parties that were all the way to the left, left-wing parties that were all the way to the right. So these labels don't really mean anything.
No, they don't mean anything. I mean, extreme right in Sweden looks like moderate Republican in the US.
It's exactly my
You
point.
know, it's
It's exactly my point. So
socialist in France looks like Democrat in the
yeah,
US. It's like,
we get caught up on these things, and we got hung up on these things, and again, it's a society that has been so hungry for the gaps between things. Like the gaps between things have shrunk and almost were obliterated. So what do? I look for sound bites, neat little boxes, things that I don't have to think. I just absorb and accept. And I'm not, and so in doing so, I have actually given up something. I've given up reason. I've given up tolerance. I've given up, part of my humanity, because I'm basically conveniently given things that I can just absorb and digest. And everything around me is moving so fast. I need to compete on every level. I need to move faster the next day than I did move today. And in the course of that, what do? I give up the gaps between things, those gaps, those little negative spaces where I can think, where I can digest, where I can deductively reason. And with
exactly.
that,
And this is why I think this time period is giving us an extraordinary, unique opportunity in the history of humanity to really turn everything on its head, and not for the sake of, being extreme, but for the sake of looking at things for what they really are and saying, okay, well, is this system sustainable? Where are we going if we continue like this?
right.
We all know we're going straight into a wall, and some people know that instinctively, and some people know that by thinking about it. But Raad, I want to ask you a question. Isn't
Sure.
that one thing that's been really interesting since the whole thing started? Haven't you noticed a very deep sense, despite, again, the huge anxiety about health, about parents, about the economy, about livelihood, which are completely legitimate, obviously. Haven't you noticed a huge sense of relief
Oh
in
yeah.
society
Yeah,
and in
I
people?
think it's almost a sense of a burden being lifted, or not necessarily lifted, but that you let it go. Like
Yeah,
you dropped the weight.
it's like everybody was secretly conscious that the previous system was unsustainable.
Absolutely.
And the fact that now we have a forced pause where we can finally start to think and start to change, it's like, wow, I had no clue. I didn't realize it. Nobody knew it was going to come this way.
Yeah.
But this is like, oh my God, I can breathe again. And the environment can breathe again. And if you look at the ocean, if you look at the forest, if you look at animals coming back into, urban centers and stuff
Right.
like that,
Right.
everything seems to be breathing again.
It's like we were allowed to unburden ourselves from things that for the longest time we were told were absolute needs and necessities to live a successful modern life.
Exactly.
And what's fascinating about that is not necessarily only the fact that we were allowed to drop them without any stigma, without any societal backlash, that we were able to just put them aside and just not have them be an important factor, right? And we put them down, let's say 60 days ago. When we put them down first time, we figured it was temporary. Now, what I'm hearing from people that I talk to, and it's regardless of age, by the way, including younger generation, right, is that the question that's in people's mind is, well, I don't really want to go back to operating in that level. I don't want to go back to operating in that endless, hamster wheel that can't move fast enough. And then basically, we were allowed to let the stuff down. We were not stigmatized. We were not societally shunned, basically, for doing that.
Yeah.
Right. There's a concept in art. And again, it's also in any kind of, I think, creative field, like even in graphic design and anything, there's a concept. Okay. And I'll use the example of what's behind me, and it's not exactly right, but what's behind me. As important as the icon of Group of Humans logo is, as important as the font style that is used to basically put that logo together, as important as those are, there's an element in there that is as important. And that is the negative space between things. Because if you did not have that negative space between things, if all you had up there was that logo repeated over and over and over and as tight, as close to each other as possible, you would no longer have the ability to see what value is there in that logo. It would become noise. It would become a cacophony of content that you cannot decipher. And when you are not given the time even to decipher and unravel it, because you have everything else that's demanding for your attention, that's when you basically short circuit. I mean, it's like what we started off when we said, like plants that are not given an ability to have a sleep cycle, people that are tortured because by music and loud noise and and bright lights and all this stuff. We literally were traumatized, I think, as a society. I mean, we were given all the trappings of the nice car and the nice clothes and eating out and socializing. And my favorite was that we basically went socializing and we called it networking. When it wasn't networking, it was socializing, right? I mean, we were traumatized. We honestly, I think, we're living a traumatized life, a stressed out, traumatized life that is equivalent to self-torture. And we were given an ability.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
I think you nailed it right. And that was really the impulse behind the creation of Yellow Spa, by the way, was really to provide a space and a method and a kind of care where people could go within again and untraumatize themselves from very traumatic, urban lives, unsustainable again from a human cycle level. How long can you go without sleep? How long can you have a screen in front of you going to bed and screwing with your melatonin level and, all of these kind of things. And, how much can you, you remember in companies, when people are on expense accounts, they go out and they start drinking like there is no tomorrow. They start ordering food. The amount of waste that I've seen, in these business dinners was just staggering. And I hope that people go back to their senses, with these kind of things. I don't need all of this food. I don't need all of this alcohol. I don't need 5 cars. I don't need 3 TVs.
That's what I'm hearing.
I'm okay with one stuff. One of each is fine. And maybe if I continue to evolve on your theme of, personal development and self-growth, maybe I won't need any of that.
Well, look, here's the thing, right? It's as custom as an individual. Every individual is going to have their own reality, where that line is, how it's defined. What I'm saying is what we have been afforded right now, if we are smart enough to actually recognize it and benefit ourselves from it and benefit those around us from it, is every one of us has been given right now an opportunity to get off the friggin' hamster wheel. Because the hamster wheel right now is closed. It's like going to a fairground and the lights come on and it's 8 o'clock at night and it's noisy as hell and da 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 da, and then you go one day and none of the machines are working. Yeah. None of the rides are working, right?
Yeah.
And you actually are able to just stroll. You're able to just kind of be in the space versus be in the doing, right? And we have been gifted this. This is one of those silver linings from this pandemic, is that we have been gifted this, and the gift of maybe reconnecting relationally with those around us in a different
with those around us and with ourselves. And someone told me yesterday something that I thought was really beautiful. She said, this spirit has allowed me to fall in love again with myself all over again. And she didn't mean that from, you know, a how do you call it?
it was more of a spiritual, yeah.
Yes, it's like it's going back into self-love, you know, but like true self unconditional love. Not like self-love because I'm looking good or because I'm brilliant or because I'm successful.
Right.
It's no, like, do I like hanging out with myself? And that's what people have to do right now. They have to, first of all, you have to hang out with yourself. Then you have to hang out with your wife or girlfriend or boyfriend if you have one. You have to hang out with your kids. You have to hang out with your roommates if that's what, you know, you're dealing with. So it's really this beautiful time where the only way that you can hang out with these people properly is being able to fall in love with yourself all over again.
Well, and as it's said, almost to the point of cliche, is that if you can't find a way to basically fall in love with yourself, you can't really find that with other people. And I think, you know, right now, maybe we come out of this with a little bit more appreciation for our relationships. That we take a more of an active role in things that are really of value versus things that are superficial and more like 8x10 glossy, shimmering kind of shiny object distractions from what we individually evaluate as being of real value for ourselves. I think what we should probably do right now is give ourselves a little bit of space between episodes, and call this one a day. I'm sure you and I will talk again, but you know, I take advantage of that, because I mean, if you've been watching this and you've been listening to this conversation I've had with Nicolas, is ask yourself what is really important, because the things that you thought were important 60 days ago, before this was forced upon us, I almost guarantee you that right now you're thinking other things are more important than what you thought was important 60 days ago. And so allow yourself to be in that space. Allow yourself to question it, to ask. Empower yourself by finding what it is that is of value for you.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Thanks,
And
Nick,
I think
for
it's a
being
good
with me.
closing. Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on your show. And this went longer than what we expected, but I think it was totally worth it. And it was a beautiful back and forth and exchange.
Thank you, my friend. Always a pleasure. I will look forward to our next sit down.
Same here.
Bye.
Bye, Raad. Good to
Take
see
care.
you, man.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.